Hey guys, what's going on? So I am here checking out a really interesting trike. It's made me smile. It's also made me laugh, and I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about it because it's rather unique. So let's go ahead and jump in. So what we got here is the Uniro NEW-TRIKE. That's the name of this vehicle, and yeah, it has, you know, a fairly interesting combination. So it's a trike, of course, so it's got, you know, fairly wide wheelbase of about 39 inches or so in the back, but it's also a folding electric trike. So it's got a motor up in the front wheel, little basket in the front, big basket in the back, and also this breakaway point right here with a latch so it can fold. But as you can tell from the size of the vehicle in general, it doesn't fold all that small, in all honesty. It just kind of changes shape a little bit. The handlebars do come down and the seat can come off, so you get a little bit of height out of that, which is the most useful part of it. But then it kind of folds into a more of a, it's kind of a smaller shape. Not too much, but it's enough to kind of fit into either a really large trunk like a Cadillac, or perhaps in the back of a Suburban, but then again, you got to lift it up kind of high. But it actually would kind of be good for an RV, so long as you got a big enough door to get through the wheelbase there. So let's go ahead and talk about the back end, because that's where all the magic is. That's where there's a lot of stuff going on. So we'll start with the tire. Well, tires, all three are the same. It's a 20-inch by 3. So it's a 20-inch diameter on the wheel, a 3-inch width on the tire, but the height of the sidewall brings it up quite a bit. So it's actually more like a 24 almost. No, not quite a 24, maybe like a 23 or so, if such a size exists. From end to end, from rubber to rubber. So this gives you a fair amount of grip on the trail or on the sidewalk that you're on. Of course, it's a trike, so off-road isn't here, you know, the first thing you'd get this thing for, but it can handle a tiny bit. On the trike, it also has a fair amount of space between them, 39 inches from end to end, so it'll fit through a door. I've done that several times. Kind of scuffed up the door a little bit. But if you have an especially narrow door, then it probably would be a squeeze to get it through. On the back end also is the set of brakes. So you actually have a mirrored set of brakes, both front to back, which is a 160 mechanical disc brake from a smaller name company. I think it's Z-Star. It's just a small company that makes brakes, and then they brand them with whatever name you want on them. But these are 160 millimeter rotors, both on the back and on the front, as well as on the other side. So these brakes are kind of cool because you got 2 sets of brakes on the back, so it actually has a fair amount of stopping power if you only use the back, if you so desire. So that's actually kind of a neat thing, and I'll show you the splitter. There's actually a splitter between the two. We'll get up to that in a second. But while we're back here, let's quickly mention the 14 by 28 Shimano cassette with a Shimano tourney derailleur. That's like a standard set of derailleur for, you know, kind of the entry price point trikes. Which, by the way, this is a fairly good price on this one, $2,000 for this trike, which is not bad because trikes are generally huge and cost a lot in shipping, both to get from the factory and also across the states. So not bad on the price for that one. Also in the back, you have the fenders. These are kind of a flat metal that's kind of curved, or, well, it's a straight metal that's flattened out, kind of giving these little curves right here on either end. Pretty strong on there, and it follows the curvature of the tire as well. Pretty high profile as well, or clearance above there, kind of floats. These fenders are attached to the frame of the basket rather than to, you know, the hub or the anything else attached to the fork or anything, because there is no fork in the back. In the back area here, you have a little cargo spot. This cargo spot is pretty interesting because it has this board on here that can carry stuff. You can put some straps on here if you wanted to carry something fairly tall, but I actually like how it's a little bit turned back, or it's a little bit recessed, so to speak, from the rider. So the rider, if you can kind of imagine, is occupying that space right there. They can sit upright just fine and have cargo that's even fairly tall that is extending upwards. So you can get a fair amount of stuff back there, and the total capacity of this vehicle is about 300 pounds from what I'm told, which is a lot. You can get a lot on there. The front basket, we'll kind of mention that real brief. The front basket doesn't carry quite as much, but it still is fairly strong because it mounts with these 4 bolts to the frame itself. So you could get something in there, and you have a fair amount of clearance as well. The handlebars are up in this spot, so even if you had, you know, something a little bit taller, say a speaker or something like that, you could still get full steering on there. It's quite common to see a front basket for bikes kind of up by the handlebars a little bit, and so you can't steer quite as extreme if such be the case. But let's go ahead and continue on with the back end. So I was talking about how the basket is a little bit pushed back, and that's due to the long seat stays and chain stays here that give you a little bit more space to work with. And this is the splitter that I was talking about. So with one lever, you pull on the right hand lever, this will actuate both brakes at the same time, which is kind of cool. That way, if you know, for some reason you had control of one hand to squeeze like that, you could just use the back brake with both of those and you'd be all right. So that's kind of neat. There is a longer chain. I believe it's a zinc covered chain. It's a little bit longer to accommodate the longer set of metal here on the seat stay and chain stay. That's coming up to the 44 tooth chain ring up in the front, which gives you a pretty good ratio for tension. Of course, a 170mm crank, square taper, no surprises there. On the pedals, these are a plastic folding pedal, which I thought was a rather interesting choice. So the pedal does kind of have like this metal center, and then the bridge is all plastic. You pull on this little latch, and then that will allow you to fold the pedal one way or the other. And then of course you pull the latch back again to get it back into position. So I thought this was rather interesting because if you look at the profile of the bike, a lot of times when you see a folding pedal, it's because you want to save just a couple of inches on either side of the bike. And that's really cool when you got a folding bike, and this is a folding trike. But when you do that, you save yourself, you know, an inch and a half or so right there, but you still got the entire width of the back end. So it doesn't save you a whole lot if you want to store this into a tight area, but it does help if you're pushing this around. I learned that while pushing it around the shop, that if you loosen up the pedals like this and fold them up, you can walk alongside the trike pretty easy. So it does help there, even if it doesn't lower the overall profile at all of the trike. It does help in that way. But they're kind of neat, you know, they work just fine. That's one thing about folding pedals that's a little bit different, or a little bit different from my expectation. I thought they were going to feel real cheap and chintzy, but they actually feel fine. They feel good. So one thing I do like about this trike is the seat. The seat has a pretty wide profile, about 8 inches or so on the footprint, and it has a fair amount of gel on the top, so it's pretty darn comfy. There's springs on the bottom there, so this seat is really good for sitting down and using the throttle. So good choice there. It is on a solid seat post. You could soften that up if you wanted to get a suspension seat post. It's a 27.2 diameter if you wanted to go that route. So moving along, we'll get to the battery when we cover the electric system. On the step-through portion, this is pretty darn low. I mean, this has got to be somewhere around 20 inches. We have the full measurements and specifications on electricbikereview.com, where you can see the full write-up for this bike, by the way. But this is and we have this measurement too, down to the inch, or quarter of an inch actually. But this is pretty low. It's not a lot of folks who can't get their leg that high. That's a little bit higher than a stair. So you can get over there and actually step into the bike pretty easily. And that's a pretty cool aspect about this trike, is that it's very approachable. You know, a lot of people could just jump on this thing and get going. So continuing on with the frame up in here, I do have a folding stem, and I could show you about the folding aspect, but let's talk a little bit more about the front end before we get into that. On the stem, this is a telescoping and folding stem. So the stem does fold. We'll get to that. It also telescopes. So this end right here comes up and you can kind of cinch it down, and then shabams. Now you have a much higher riding position if you wanted to put your weight back of the rider, kind of keep your arms out a little bit. So that's actually kind of neat. You can do that on the fly, super easy, which is cool if you want to share this trike with other people. You can adjust this, you can adjust the seat on the fly, and that way a lot of different people this single vehicle can accommodate, which is neat. Handlebars are fairly narrow. That's kind of typical for a folding bike. In this case, I don't know if it was entirely necessary. They could have gotten a little bit longer just because of the total width of the vehicle in the first place. And don't have a whole lot of real estate up here, but you do have everything necessary. Got your display, got your brake handles, your shifter, a bell, a throttle, and also the grips. All of that's up here, so you got all the necessities right up front. These grips are kind of a friction mounted they do have like an ergonomic edge to them, so that's kind of nice. And of course the brakes also have a motor inhibitor. These are like a big long 4-finger lever, so you can totally get your whole hand on there if you need to. This is the indexer for the gears that we talked about in the back. You don't have any gears up front, just the ones in the back. Bell, I think you know how that works. And the display, we will cover that when we get to the electric system. One last thing is this latch right here on the tippy top. That will allow you to adjust the handlebars on this axis, which the point of it is to allow better folding. It kind of comes as a package with this stem when they source this. But when you undo that, you can actually fold the handlebars down so that the brakes are kind of out of the way. And then you kind of give it a really slim, kind of a slim line here as you fold the handlebars down all the way. But for me, I usually wind up using this because I want to adjust where the brake handles are. If the brake handles are too high, in an extreme position like this, you wind up riding around with your hands up like you're waving at somebody. But you generally want to have them in a more natural position. So actually fine-tune that quite a bit. And that's also necessary if you're going to increase or decrease the height of the handlebars in the first place. So yeah, the more you know. So the last couple things to talk about on the front end. There is another fender just like the back. This one does not have the, like I mentioned prior, the bridge that kind of mounts to the bottom of the fork. So that's an interesting thing about it. Definitely gives it a different look up here. But you do have a mirrored set of brakes, tires, wheels. The spokes are a little bit stronger. These are actually a 12 gauge spoke up front because they have to handle the energy that's coming from the motor up here. Yeah, it's pretty fun stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about the electric system a little bit. This is a 500 watt motor up in the front with a 750 max. So that puts out a fair amount of power, and it's definitely necessary for a heavier vehicle like this. This thing weighs 80 pounds itself, not including the rider. So it's a pretty big beast. And if you intend to load it up on the back with some cargo, which we are going to do in a little bit, then yeah, it's quite a bit of quite a bit of power necessary to carry that out. And of course you got the mirrored set of brakes. I think I mentioned that. Continuing on with the electric system, so this is one kind of oversight that I wasn't too thrilled about. The light is mounted to this metal bar right here on the fork, which is fine to be mounted on a metal bar like this. Unfortunately, you can see that it comes into contact with the bottom of the basket. So that forces the light down unless I bend the bar in some other way. But then, there's not a whole lot of space, not a whole lot of clearance in between the fender and the bottom of the basket there. So this is kind of the best I could get on kind of a short notice as far as mounting it. So it's kind of pointed down, so at least half of this light is being consumed by the the front of the fender there. So it's not the best option, but it is there. It does have a front light. You will see a little bit more out of the front. But yeah, that mounting spot right there is not ideal. Perhaps in a later production run they will have a different mount. Perhaps they'll extend the wire here and have it mount to the front. That might actually be what this plate is for. I thought it was for like a vanity thing if you wanted to put a sticker on the front, but I personally would rather have the light mounted up here. So perhaps, like I said, in another production run they'll get this kind of squared away, but as it stands, it's an oversight. There's no other way to put it. With the electric system, we do have a throttle that powers the front wheel, which is pretty fun. I always love me a throttle. This is a twist throttle, and it actually is tied to the level of pedal assist that you're using. So in this case, on the display, we'll go ahead and jump there. On the display has all the basics, has your speed, the battery level on 5 bars, and also your pedal assist on the right side. Pressing the plus or minus button will change the amount of pedal assist that you're getting from the cadence sensor, but it also caps the throttle. So if you have it in pedal assist level 1, the throttle also will go to about 13 miles an hour or so. And then when you increase pedal assist level 2, the throttle will now go up to, I don't know, 16 miles an hour. I'm kind of pulling numbers out of a hat from here on out. And then it goes up to level 5. And at level 5, you have maximum pedal assist and you have access to the full power band from the throttle itself. So they are tied together, keep that in mind. The other orientation is if the throttle has full power all the time. That's called throttle override, if you're curious. So the display is fairly simple and easy to use. I kind of showed you a little bit about what it has. The plus and minus buttons are pretty easy to get the hang of. On the bottom there is a power button and also a mode button. If you press the mode button, it will cycle through a few metrics: your average speed, max speed, trip set, an odometer, a timer, things like that. Fun stuff. And the power button, of course, if you press and hold that, it'll turn it on or off. If you press and hold the plus button, that will actually turn on the lights. So it turns on that front light that I told you is kind of obstructed. It'll turn on a back light for the display itself, as well as this rear light way in the back. And I like the rear light being integrated into the main battery pack. It means you don't have to switch batteries on them, so it's really convenient. And of course, you press and hold plus button and that turns it back off again. So that's how to use a display. Let's see. Oh, I was going to talk about the folding aspect, but I think I'll finish off the battery real quick and the cadence sensor, and we'll jump right in. So this is using a 12 magnet cadence sensor. It's what I guess I'd call an external sensor. So you can kind of see it right here poking out a little bit with those little spots on there. Those are magnets. So there's a static sensor on the other side that's counting the rotations of the pedals, and that's what gives you pedal assist. So this is the battery. I actually kind of like the mounting position right here. It kind of looks like you would need to fold the seat out of the way, or maybe get the collar from the seat post, but it actually comes in and out of here pretty easy. Let me show you how that works. So there is a unique key that comes with it. And let's see, we'll go ahead and turn the key. So this key actually just physically mounts the battery to the bicycle. It's not responsible for ignition or anything. So we'll go ahead and turn that. And then you pull up on it, and it doesn't have to come all that far out before, there we go, before it's ready to be loose. Shabams. So here we go. We have the 48 volt, 11.6 amp hour battery. And it's pretty convenient to take with you if you want to carry in and out. This is a newer kind of battery style that's been out for, I don't know, a couple years at most. And it's really gained a lot of traction, and I can see why. It's a nice system. So yeah, you have the electric system, the mechanical system, and I swear I'm not going to forget about folding it. So let's go ahead. I'll try to do this one hand as best I can. We'll fold the handlebars down. I don't know if it's really necessary for this particular bicycle, but this is kind of a very common method. Fold the handlebars down. Sometimes you have to get the pedals in a correct orientation, like so, and we'll just fold them in. Why not? We're here. There we go. And then from there, you pull up on this little tab and then pull the latch out of the way. And then the handlebars swing down like so. All right, we can get the seat out of the way too. We'll go all the way. And that's kind of a handy place to put it. And now the fun part. You open up the quick release and you pull the latch out of the way. Then you gotta kind of pull up on it a little bit towards your face, and then that will allow it to come out. So a lot of times folding bikes will just kind of fall apart from this point, and you gotta keep a hand on them. But in this case, it's a trike, so it kind of supports itself a little bit. Let's go ahead and fold all the way. I actually kind of like this this set of springs right here that they have over the wires. That's kind of cool. Let's see, and let's get the last inch and then let it kind of rest. Boom. Okay, so here you have the trike all folded up, and there it is. So like I said, it does change shape, and it's a little bit easier to manage, especially on the height aspect. It's not, you know, so high. It cuts off a good foot or so, so you could probably cram that into the back of an SUV if you needed to, at least a medium-sized SUV. You know, if you get a smaller one like the Hummer H3, that thing is surprisingly small in the back end for the cargo space. But anyways, I'm kind of getting off track. Let's go ahead and put it back together, and we'll go ahead and jump on for a ride. All right, let's cut a rug. Let's go ahead. We're on like level 1 pedal assist, so it's not going terribly fast on throttle. Let me go ahead and increase the height of the handlebars. You should probably shouldn't do this while you're riding the bike, but I'm going like 6 miles an hour, so that's my justification. All right, that is a little more comfortable. Okay, looks like when I was building the bike, I could have put the stem a little more straight. That's okay. All right, so let's get a little more power onto the Uniro NEW-TRIKE. Let's have some fun. So right now I have the handlebars a little bit high, and I have the seat a little bit high as well. And that puts my weight, my personal rider weight, a little high. And so maneuverability is like a lot of trikes. You know, it's, you know, you get one wheel coming off the ground if you take too tight of a turn. If you kind of take that easy, you know, kind of go right 11 miles an hour or so is about a comfortable max. You can make some pretty good turns on that speed. But this trike is capable of a lot more. It goes 20 without issue. I mean, I probably wouldn't want to because, you know, this trail is fairly turny. Good for the Shimano tourney. Let's go ahead. We're going about 15 miles an hour. I got. Oop. That's my back. Okay. My cargo started to get in the way of the wheels. That's one thing I forgot to mention, was that there's no wheel skirts on this to protect the cargo. In a little bit, we'll go ahead and grab Sweet Pea and put her in the back. You can carry a kid in the back of this for short trips, but kids got to be pretty darn disciplined and pretty small, which is a tough combination if they're not going to put their feet or their hands or their shoelaces inside of the wheels. So I generally not recommend it for kids, but we'll go ahead and try it out and see what it does, mainly for cargo. But yeah, let's go ahead and get a little tipsy with this guy and see which side the brakes go on. Okay, it's the right side. So I'm not exactly sure the engineering behind it all, but I do know that with a lot of trikes, it's very common for them to, in the back wheel, have one wheel that does the stopping and a different wheel that's kind of the follower, the dummy wheel. Again, I'm not sure the engineering or the proper terminology for it, but in this case, if I'm taking a left turn and I tap on the brakes, on the rear brakes, I have stopping power from the right wheel that is on the terrain, right? So I can slow down that way. If, on the other hand, I take a right turn and then my right wheel is up off the ground, pressing on the rear brake, whoop, and there goes my bag again. Let's fix that. Okay, pressing on the rear brake won't help me because the right wheel is up in the air. So, you know, in this case, it's rather silly because I'm intentionally driving around trying to get things to stop working. But it's a good thing to know, you know, that if you take a lot of right turns, which generally, I mean, it's a little safer to do so. If you take a lot of right turns, that wheel's going to come off. If you take a lot of left turns, you're still going to have stopping power. So that's how this particular trike weighs in. You know, that's how the brakes work in the back. If you're riding with both wheels on the ground, then both wheels have traction and they both stop just fine. But if you're taking a tight turn, got one wheel off, you're doing a little bit of skydiving, it kind of feels that way when you're up on two wheels. Woo! So yeah, fun stuff. Overall, I mean, compared to other trikes, I mean, the price point on this thing is really nice. This does come from a Las Vegas warehouse from a Chinese company. So, I mean, you're kind of, you know, some people call it, you know, subverting the shop. But in all honesty, if you get a bike like this, you're going to want to go to a local shop to get tubes and probably some tire liners at the very least, and maybe some other fixer-up kind of things. So, yeah, don't be afraid of your local shops. Anyways, let's go ahead and try a little bit of, let's jump in the grass. Use these fat tires. So pedal assist is pretty standard, you know, a 12 magnet cadence sensor. If you've ridden electric bikes, it's very common. It has a very low impact kind of feeling when you're pedaling. You pedal along and you don't need to keep tension on the gears. You'll notice I haven't even changed gears at all, but that still powers the bike. Let's go ahead and jump up this hill and see what we got. All right, here we go, approaching the hill. We're at about 5 miles an hour or so. Let's go ahead. Yeah, we can do it. I'm pedaling along, but it can do it. I'm spinning out. Let's get to the dry stuff. All right, not bad, not bad. So I actually rode the other Unirow bike, the eFat MN, which is like a fat tire folding bicycle with two wheels, and that one just jumped up the hill. You know, I couldn't stop it. No, of course I could. I had control, but it was quite capable. This guy, the trike, is substantially heavier, and you also have the motor power up in the front wheel, so it's not as capable for climbing a steep, loose terrain. But in all honesty, that's not going to be all that common with a trike like this. Somebody who gets this trike is probably going to want it for fairly low speed, kind of cruising around the neighborhood, maybe get some groceries, a small Costco run or so. So yeah, let's go ahead and get back down to the park. Let's go pick up Sweet Pea, go for a ride, and finish this up. Keep those feet together.
Why is this going fast, Daddy?
All right, guys, here we are on the Uniro fat folding trike. Let's go ahead and crank it all the way up to level 5 pedal assist, and we'll take it for a spin. That was fun. Right after we got onto the sidewalk, that's when I put the trike into full throttle. I skid a little bit as I was coming to a good stop. So yeah, the brakes work. Just testing out the brakes, that's all I was doing. I was going about like 32 kilometers an hour or so as I was hitting top speed on there. So yeah, fun stuff. Okay guys, thanks for checking out the Uniro NEW-TRIKE with me. It's been a lot of fun, a very fun experience.